India has finally kicked off the process of theatrization of its military. In this episode of Government Matters, we want to look ahead to understand what this process means, what is the ultimate objective, and what is it going to achieve. So do start sending in your questions. I have with me Snehish Alex Philip, who, as you know, tracks defense for ThePrint and has been tracking this particular issue very, very closely. So Snehish, there was a little bit of iffiness earlier about whether this would happen or when it would happen rather. Now that it's finally been kickstarted, let's just begin by first explaining to our viewers, including people like me who perhaps don't even understand what this really technically means.
Well, theatrization, there was no iffiness as to whether this theatrization would happen. I think the government is absolutely clear. The fact that the CDS, one of the charter of the CDS is to bring in joiners and bring in through theatre command. It's part of the charter. So the iffiness was on when it would happen. Now, what does the theatrization means to achieve? Now, what currently, you have, there are about 19 military commands in the country, of which 17 are belonging to each services. For example, the Army has 7 commands, the Air Force has 7 commands, and of course the Navy. And there is only one joint command, which is the Andaman and Nicobar command. Now, as per the theatrization plan, all these 17 commands would be brought in, merged together, and into 4 or 5 theatre commands. Now, these theatres, as per the current plan, would have specific roles looking at specific borders. So, for example, you will have the Western theatre, which will look after the entire borders with Pakistan. Then you will have the Eastern theatre, which will look after the entire borders with China. And then, of course, the Myanmar and rest of the countries in that front, including, Nepal border will also come under that. So then what you will have is what was earlier known as the Air Defence Command.
Right.
But the terminology could change. For example, earlier it was Western Land Theatre, now it's called the Western Theatre. So there was a concept of Air Defence Command, now it could be Air Command itself. So you will have one Air Command which will look after the air defence and will also be the, sole will have the sole responsibility of the air power. Of course, the air assets would be divided into various theatres, but then there would be, like even now also, the Air Force gets divided into, Air Force itself has 7 commands. And then you will also have the Naval Command, which is, so that is also one thing which is to be formed. So the Northern Command, which is the Army's Northern Command, but remember that the Northern Command also has a AOC of the for JNK, who's part. So the AOC, JNK as well as the Northern Command will not be touched as of now. It only a call once the theatre command is formed, is raised, is formed and stabilizes, then a decision would be taken on what to do with the Northern Command, whether to have a separate theatre or get it amalgamated into the existing theatres. Now, what has happened now is that the CDS, that is the Chief of Defence Staff, General Bipin Rawat, has gone ahead and asked the 3 services to dual task. Again, I said dual task, one CNC rank officer to form this structure, to study and set up this structure for the theatre command. For example, you have the Southwestern Army Command, which is based in Jaipur. So the Army commander there has been asked to to study and formulate the structure of the Western theatre. Now, of course, he will have officers from the Air Force and the Navy helping him out eventually. So similarly, the Air Force and the Navy have also been asked to dual task one commander. So this particular commander would not be called a theatre commander. He's only been dual tasked. So what will happen now is that he will study the structures, he will form the structures. Structures means who sits where, what needs to be done, the entire paraphernalia that comes with a command. And then that structure would be studied at the center, and then is when relevant sanctions would be taken from the government and the theatre commands would be rolled out.
Okay.
So,
So this process will take, as you said, 2 to 3 years.
Well, it is said it will take 2 to 3 years, but I presume it could actually take longer. It could, for example, China, which had initiated its theatre commands way back in 2015-16, is still in the process of settling the whole theatres. Theatre command is going to be the biggest defense reform that will be there that the country has ever witnessed.
Right.
So it is going to take time. It is important not to rush into it because it has much larger ramification to it. So 2 to 3 years at the earliest.
All right. Okay. So I have many viewer questions, and I'm very glad for that because I'm a bit under the weather. So I would rather leave it to our viewers to ask you informed questions. This one is from Surya Valiveti, who is a member of the Print YouTube community. Surya wants to know, will logistics of all the services be unified?
Hi Surya, thank you for your question and thank you for becoming a member of the YouTube. Your question was on the logistics. There is already now joint logistic nodes that are being created, for example, in Mumbai and Chennai and one more place. So logistics will, the future, besides of course these 4 to 5 commands, you will also end up having a joint command for logistics and a joint command for training. So the work on the logistics is already on. Nodes are being set up where there is a common pool that is there. The training, there was a study that was conducted recently. That study has been completed and the study is now under further study by the Department of Military Affairs and the Chief of Defence Staff. So yes, training and logistics would be key elements too.
All right. Nilotpal Singh, does broadening of the military pyramid create chances of more corruption in military deals?
I didn't get the question.
Does broadening of the military pyramid create more chances of corruption in military deals?
No, there is no broadening of military system that is there. Actually, what they're trying to do is, what is being spread out is being brought into a much unified
cohesive
and a more agile, cohesive way. As far as corruption is there, I don't know what corruption are you referring at, but corruption is always there in any profession, and so yeah.
All right. Okay. This is a viewer called JR009 Pranav who has a few questions. So I'll take the first one. In light of the recent events concerning Afghan evacuations, should India have ordered more C-17 jets? So this is moving away from theatrization, but a relevant question.
Well, is he a member of the YouTube?
No, Pranav, please do become a member.
Pranav, please do become a member. Rui has said you've asked multiple questions. Whether India should have gone in for more C-17s? Well, India already has a large number of C-17s. Then you also have the C-130J. And as far as the evacuation is concerned, the evacuation has been taking place. So there is no impact on the evacuation process because of the availability or non-availability of the military aircraft. So that is one. And the next question is whether do we need more C-17s?
Yeah.
Well, the fact is that you ask anybody in the Air Force or the Army or anything, they would say, yes, we want 100 C-17s, 100 C-130J, we want 200 Rafale fighter jets. But eventually we'll have to prioritize where the money is being sent. Remember that the money bank is small, so it has to be spread evenly. So for example, we have the C-130J, we have the C-17, both of which have been used for evacuation of Afghanistan. The government only last evening has gone ahead and cleared the nearly $3 billion deal for the Tata Airbus C-295. So this would be the first time that a military aircraft would be manufactured by an Indian private company in India. So and this particular deal has been pending for long. Remember that this deal was actually, the cost negotiations were completed way back in 6 years ago, and the deal has only been inked now, and the delay was primarily because of financial constraints. So, of course, anybody would say we would want 100 C-17s, but right now the C-17s are enough. I can also tell you for the fact that there could be a follow-on. There could be an additional order for more C-17s, that is actually in the works.
Okay, I'll quickly take another question from Pranav, then move on to other viewer questions. In your opinion, what is the likelihood of the IAF ordering an additional 36 Rafale jets?
Well, I've always been, you can ask Rui or anybody else, I've always been saying that the larger deal for the 114 fighter jets is MRFA is unlikely to go ahead. But then that's a decision which is yet to be taken by the government. You already have 36. I don't know if you've read my stories. I've mentioned in parts that we now have two bases. There is no logic behind having two bases for just 36 aircraft. A single base can easily accommodate the 36 Rafale fighter jets. Two bases means additional cost in terms of setting up those two bases, in terms of logistics and all. And plus, I feel that yes, the India already has the capability or the infrastructure available for induction of more Rafale. But then I know for the fact that any such decision would be taken once the delivery of the all 36 is completed. But as I've mentioned earlier in the reports also, while the current deal for 36 cost us about 7.838 billion euros, that even if we go in, let's assume if we go in for the next 36 Rafale fighter jets, the deal would be actually much cheaper. It would work out to about anywhere between 4.8 to 5.3 billion euros. This primarily because about 1.3 billion euros was paid for India specific enhancements. So that is a one-time payment. It doesn't matter whether you buy 40 aircraft or you just one aircraft. So that was a one-time payment that was done. So the order for any next Rafale in flyaway conditions would not involve the component for the India specific enhancements, and also the logistics part of it, setting up the two additional bases, that's already been paid for, so it's going to be much cheaper. But however, don't just think of another 36 more. There could be a little surprise there on that front.
All right. Okay, this is from Venkatakrishnan Ramakrishnan, who is a member of the Print YouTube community. Is there any visible change after the appointment of CDS?
There is a huge change after the appointment of the CDS. Multiple decisions which were traditionally taken by the civilians, the bureaucracy is now been taken by the DMA, the Department of Military Affairs. Remember that, so everybody says CDS, so you can't expect something drastic to happen, in one day with the appointment of the CDS. So when General Bipin Rawat was appointed as the CDS, he was informed only 2 days earlier, that is 2 days before his retirement, that he's going with the CDS. So he retired on the 31st of December, and on the 1st of December, he took over as a CDS. Now, when he took over as a CDS, there was no office of the CDS. There was no office earmarked. But since it was the IDS headquarters, now this is an interesting nugget that I'm telling you. Since it was the office of the IDS, he went down to the office of the IDS and sat in the conference room and made his that particular conference room as his office. Then later, he was given a room that was lying vacant, and he took over as a CDS. And even when the CDS, there was no, and plus his DA, who was with him as the army chief, accompanied him, became his DA when he became the CDS. So it was only this General Bipin Rawat and his DA sitting in that room. Eventually, even the formal appointments of the joint secretaries, additional secretaries and all, came only earlier this year, even though he had taken over as the CDS on the 1st of Jan.
Right.
So the CDS is a big transformative reform that has taken place in the armed forces. This was pending. This brings in a more unified approach to war fighting, more unified approach to training, more unified approach to acquisitions. However, to expect something extraordinary in such a short span of time, it is not possible. I think it would take about, this is right now is in the raising stage, then there would be a stabilization stage and the full working. So it will eventually take about appointment of a second or probably a third CDS for the things to completely smoothen out.
Right. These are processes which take time.
Yeah.
All right. Another YouTube community member, Aru Basu, will these commands help in overcoming the problems at the China border?
See, see on the China front, now who all looks after the China front? Now, the China front is looked after, of course, then you have Ladakh, Leh Ladakh area, which is looked after by the Northern Command. Then you have the central sector, which is looked after by a different command. Then you have the eastern sector, which is again looked after by a different command. So there are literally 3 commands that come into play when it comes to China. Whereas on the Chinese side, it's the Western theater which looks after the entire border with India. Hence, yes, there is, and the Western theatre has its own dedicated pool of various kinds of systems, be it artillery, be it armored, be it fighters, be it any other element. But in India's case, it gets divided. So, a one theatre approach in the longer run with enough resources will work out to be a much better choice than having multiple commands looking after just one border.
Okay, I have time for one last
But
question.
as I said, in the longer run, with enough assets in place.
All right. This question is from Ankit N. Why is the Air Force opposing theatrization? Are they not taken into confidence, or are there some vested interests who are opposing it?
See, I would not say vested interest per se. Whenever, for example, even if we as individuals have to change our daily routine that we have, we find it very difficult. And the armed forces, be it anywhere in the world, across the world, not just India, are most immune to changes. They don't like changes. Now, when you're speaking about from the Air Force point of view, the Air Force is completely supportive of the theatre command. But their argument is that there should be only single theatre, which is the India theatre. Their argument is that the Air Force assets gets divided into different theatres. So, for example, Western theatre, Northern theatre, Eastern theatre, and then the Air Command. So they say our assets right now, they just have 30 squadron of fighters as against a sanctioned strength of 42. So their argument is that these assets gets divided, which is not helpful. So, but the counter argument to that is that, for example, right now there are only 36 Rafales, but the Air Force itself has deployed, 18 Rafales in one place to take care of the borders with Pakistan, and 18 Rafales in Hashimara, Ambala and Hashimara. So the Air Force itself divides. But now and plus the other argument is that even if the assets gets divided, the Air Force chief will continue to have the power of deploying, of moving assets from one theatre to the other. So that would be part of the committee of the 3 service chiefs headed by the CDS.
Right.
So and plus there are multiple questions, the new thing. So the more brainstorming takes place, the more discussions takes place. It is important because, as I said, this is going to bring far-reaching changes to the way that the Indian military is structured, to the way that the Indian military would fight future wars, and hence it is better to go slow rather than bring out any changes drastically.
All right, okay, theatrization of the military, which Snehesh says is perhaps the most historic reform in the Indian military. Lots of questions we unfortunately couldn't take because of paucity of time, but Snehesh will reply to them as comments on YouTube. Also,
become a member and I'll respond to all the members' questions.
All our viewers are valuable. We'll respond to all your questions. Also, if there are any issues that you would want us to discuss in Government Matters, if there is any particular issue or any particular question that you might want us to take up, please do leave a comment and I'll make sure that I have our domain expert on that with me in the next episode of Government Matters to talk about that. Thank you for watching and for subscribing to our YouTube channel. Do become a member of the Print YouTube community.
Thank you.